There we go. Brilliant.
You're live streaming, Chairman.
Right, thank you. Let me just click continue. Super. Right, good evening, everybody. Welcome to this meeting of the Service Improvement and Efficiency Committee. I am Councillor Grant Nurden, and I will be chairing this meeting as the Vice Chairman. Our Chairman is unfortunately not able to attend for personal family reasons. As this meeting is live streamed, we are reminded to abide by the Council's etiquette for remote meetings. So without further ado, we will move on to a roll call and agenda item 1 to receive declarations of interest under procedure rule number 8. So is that over to you, James?
That's me today, Chairman.
Who's me?
Leah, sorry.
Oh, Leah.
Councillor Ballman?
Present. No declarations of interest, in case
Thank
you wanted to ask me.
Thank you. Councillor Catchpole?
Present, no declarations of interest.
Thank you. Councillor Holland?
Present, no declarations.
Councillor Kelly isn't here yet, so I'll move on. Councillor King?
Present, no declarations.
Councillor Mackie?
Present, no declarations.
Councillor Morrell?
Present, no declarations.
Councillor Nurden?
Present and no declarations.
Councillor Prutton?
Present and no declarations.
And Councillor Roper?
Present and no declarations.
And can I just ask the non-committee members who are in the room, so Councillor Leggett?
No declarations.
Thank you. Councillor Copperstone?
Present, no declarations. Thank you.
Councillor Mancini-Boyle?
Present, no declarations.
Councillor Brennan?
Present, no declarations.
Councillor Emsall?
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Riley?
No declarations.
Councillor Creamy-Govan-Liu?
Present, no declarations.
And Councillor Lorne?
Present, no declarations.
Thank you. That's completed, Chair.
Right, thank you very much. Do we have apologies for absence other than the Chairman?
Other than the Chairman, we have no other apologies for absence.
Okay, super, thank you. Right, then we go on to the minutes of the last meeting, which was held on the 11th of January at 6 p.m. Would you like me to go through that page by page, or shall I take the document for any corrections or amendments? Happy to take it as read.
Take it as read.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Right, so I can go ahead and sign that. Moving on, well, there isn't a matters arising, but are there any matters arising that members wish to pick up from those minutes? Councillor Catchpole.
Thank you, Chair. It's just to follow on really from the call times or call waiting times. I've tried to get through a couple of times since that meeting, and it's taking an extraordinarily long time for the phone to be answered and then for calls to be transferred. So I just wanted to find out whether any more action had been taken on that front. Thank you.
Right. Who is going to be able to? Super. Yep. Thanks, Emma.
Yep, no problem. So on that, we do. Oh, excuse me. We are running regular weekly reports on all call volumes, all call times, and all call responses. Managers get those on a regular basis and respond to those. We have a red, amber, green rating on those, and if there's anywhere that goes obviously into the amber or into the red, we do take action on those. So we are regularly reviewing those and are seeing improvements. If there's anything in particular, Councillor Catchpole, if you let me know, then I can take that back. Any particular examples, I can take that back to the service areas.
Right, thank you, Emma. I see there was a question from Councillor Roper. Dan, if you want to go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. It's following up on that point, actually, and it's about whether the statistics on that capture calls that go through to mailboxes that are full. I think one frustration that I've had when calling officers recently is, okay, yes, I'm being put, the phone is answered by reception, I'm put through, but then I encounter a mailbox that's full. I'm wondering if some action could be taken to clean up some of the mailboxes and make sure that there aren't messages sitting from residents that aren't being checked.
Absolutely. Being really honest, one of my pet hates is the use of voicemail, because people don't check them. What we're putting around across all of our service areas, obviously if it's a single person, a single operation, we would need a voicemail, but we're putting in what we call hunt groups. So the calls will go to other people within that service area and work their way around, rather than having those mailboxes that are full. So we are working through those to reduce down the number of those that we have, but staff are regularly reminded to look at them. But for that very reason, we're reducing them as much as we can.
Super, thanks for that. Emma, is there anybody else that's got a question on the minutes? Because I can't see everybody on the screen. So I'm relying on Leah or James to just mention if there is anything.
No one I can see is indicating, Chair.
Super,
No,
thank you very much.
well. Yeah.
Right. Okay, so then we move on to the next agenda item, which is social prescribing, and that I believe is being presented by Kerry Gallagher.
Yes, hello.
So,
Hello, good evening, everybody. You'll all have read the report, so I won't go through it word for word with you, but I will just kind of identify some key points and messages that would be good, I think, to reiterate, really. So this particular report has been cited by the Wellbeing Panel, and it was a discussion that it follows on from a discussion that was had at that Wellbeing Panel about, we were talking about COVID in general, if I'm honest, and a discussion ensued about the quality of and the performance of the social prescribing service that currently exists within the Borden district area, and what we might hope to do about that in the future. And I think some of this work that we're talking about tonight with regard to the introduction of some community connectors goes some way to help us to resolve some of those issues that we saw. So for those of you who aren't familiar, and many of you have heard my spiel about this before, this sits as part of our COVID response, and also builds on the work of the Help Hub in general. So the Help Hub really is all about supporting residents to help themselves and to help each other at the earliest possible opportunity to prevent issues from escalating. And what we know about COVID is that it's going to heighten those issues that will have been present in normal life. Before COVID, people had issues, and they're going to have perhaps even more greater things to deal with following the pandemic and when it does come to an end in coming years. So this is an opportunity for us to test the community connector model, which we know works. We know is a great way to prevent need for additional services. We know it's a great diversionary activity that does prevent people from using not just our own council services like housing and environmental protection services in greater numbers, but also adult and children's services, police services. There's a huge knock-on effect to getting to support people that little bit earlier. So there's also, I think one of the big things that's come out in particular of COVID is an excellent connection that we have now with mutual aid groups and also just other community groups that exist. At the moment, we talk an awful lot about mutual aid groups and what they're able to do for the community, because actually everyone's focus is on how do we ensure that people have food and support that they need. That work will continue through the stuff that the team have been doing around the Community Links project, which is all about helping those mutual aid groups to come together and be supportive of each other, and therefore stronger in supporting those individuals on the ground. We see that this community connector model will enhance that even further. There'll be such an excellent link between those community groups that are out on the ground doing that work, and also those that are there for the purpose of an activity. We'll all be really pleased to see the reintroduction of things like knit and natter groups and children and baby groups and that sort of thing, and the connectors provide an absolutely brilliant ability to communicate with those groups on the ground. So the final bits and pieces to mention that are in the report, also that this allows us to consider an extended hours service on the long term for the Help Hub. So I tried to call Norwich City Council today. I shouldn't name them really, but I tried to call them and they're only open 9 till 4. And as a working person, that's incredibly difficult to get hold of somebody. What we hope is that by extending the hours of the Help Hub on the long-term basis, by using the community connectors, we will allow people to access help from us till 10 p.m. at night. At the moment, that service is available, but it's currently being dealt with by community connectors that are funded to work in South Norfolk. By having a couple in Broadland, we'll be able to secure that for the future in Broadland. So this is an opportunity to enhance a service with a clear plan about how we can continue in the future. So though we're looking at using the COVID response, the COVID recovery money that's available to us at the moment, we do have a clear plan about how we can fund this in the future, or how we would hope to fund it in the future. So in the NN3 and the NN4 PCN areas in Broadland, which cover mainly the rural parts of our district, there is the funding that's currently in place for social prescribing, which is at the moment allocated to a voluntary sector conglomerate. There is that comes up for review in March 2022. We've already started discussions with those clinical directors in those particular primary care networks, and we're getting some real positive feedback that we can start proper discussions when their minds are perhaps slightly diverted from the need to vaccinate the entire population. So we're hoping to discuss those matters in greater detail from May 2021, looking towards next year at the point that this funding would come to an end. I think they were the main points I wanted to raise. I hope that's okay.
That sounds excellent. Thank you, Kerry. The recommendation before us is we're being asked to comment on the future delivery model and make recommendations. Oops, I see there's something else, as to Cabinet as appropriate. So that's what we're going to focus our attention on. I see that Councillor Bullman, you have a question or a comment you would like to make.
As a question, please. We're proposing to employ 2 temporary community connectors. Will they be on a fixed term contract, or how will they be employed?
That would be on a fixed term contract. We wouldn't be able to offer them any more than that. The money that we would have allocated to at the moment is that COVID recovery fund that I mentioned, or outbreak management fund, I should say. So it would be on a temporary contract. It would be inevitable that at interview, that person would say, is there the opportunity to carry on? And we would be completely honest with them and say, it's our aspiration that we would continue this service into the future, into whatever format it might evolve into. But absolutely, those interviewees and potential candidates would be made aware that it would be a temporary post.
So no guarantees then?
No, but I think people expect that. I think people are really used to, especially in this particular sector, seeing that projects have to see how they go before they're confirmed any further than that.
Okay, thank you.
Right, next is Councillor Holland.
Hello, yes, I just had a question about your paragraph 3.9 and 3.10. You've said that following a competitive selection process, you've been selected as the lead provider in the NHS Eastern region. But then in 3.10, it talks about it's not provided by Broadland, and that then you've just said it will be up for review at a later date. So I'm slightly puzzled about what the October 2020 thing is in relation to the options that you're talking about in the future.
My apologies that that's caused confusion. So they're 2 fairly separate things. So when we talk about delivering social prescribing in Broadland, that's about physical delivery within GP surgeries. 3.9 refers to a national project which seeks to raise awareness of social prescribing, raise engagement with voluntary sector groups and community groups around the idea that they could be the deliverer of those social prescribing activities. To quote Mark in the team, he talks a lot about social prescribing being a sort of travel agent holiday circumstance. So the social prescribers are travel agents. They are helping people to access their holidays, or in effect the activities that will help them get over their problems and concerns that they've got. So the point of that project in 3.9 is to enhance the number of effectual activities, or holidays, if you will, in that analogy. So that's something that we're really involved with on a national basis, working with arts organisations, sports organisations, and all of those kind of community-based activities that enable somebody to get help outside of the usual things that you'd expect, like housing support and debt and welfare. We're trying to look at a really holistic picture around that person that would prevent them from needing services in the future. And that's what we've been able to be a part of with Julie Ringer that works for the team. She's been seconded into that role. I hope that helps. I'm sorry that was a bit confusing.
So one is that this is about raising awareness, and the other one is about doing the activity.
Yeah. What we're talking about in the context of this report is all about practical delivery. 3.9 just refers to something that we've been able to secure, largely because I think we're considered to be pretty good providers around social prescribing in the area. I hope, anyway.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks.
Right, thank you. That's I didn't see any more questions. I just have a few questions.
Sorry, Chair, I think myself and Councillor Catchpole are in the chat as to listing.
Okay, sorry. Right, over to you, Councillor Roper.
Thank you. A question and then a comment afterwards, probably. The question is, could you give me a little bit more of a flavour of the gap analysis around the existing social prescribing service which is out there, in terms of, is it better in the urban areas? Is it less, because I can see there are two contracts running here, the city one and the wider Broadland one. So I'm just wanting just to get more of a flavour of what gaps we're looking to fill here, and also some context in terms of potential overlap with the COVID advisor roles as well, and how this role would fit in with it.
Absolutely. So to give you a kind of a bit of analysis of where we think the gaps exist, the models are on paper perhaps quite similar, but actually on the ground quite distinctly different. The model that we would really recommend as officers having, I could bore you to tears about social prescribing for hours, but one of the things that we think is incredibly important is that the officers themselves, or the community connectors, are really based within that GP surgery, and they get to know those people. So if you're the community connector, your name is Jane, I want the doctor or the nurse that speaks to a patient to say, I'm going to refer you to Jane. She's going to help you, and they become a part of that unit. The service that's currently delivered in Broadland doesn't have that. The cases are referred to an organisation who will call you. You might speak to somebody in person, you might not. It's not going to be at the surgery where you're familiar. And I think that, well, I don't think, I know, I've had enough of the feedback from the GP practices themselves. That's the sort of service that they want to be able to offer their patients. And that's where you build an excellent relationship and therefore have greater success, I think, with dealing with those problems kind of day to day. We also know that the numbers aren't as high. If you were, I think the members of the wellbeing panel, and it's all in this report, but I haven't got two screens to have a quick look to remind myself, but there's a graph that shows the real difference in the numbers that are being seen through these services. I think only reiterating the point that if a service isn't there on the day, in that building, and it's not in front of people, they don't refer into it. They can't see the outcomes that are being achieved. One of the real pluses, I think, of being based in that surgery, in addition, is that you can have those kind of casual conversations about things. You can go to the GP and ask for more information and really support that customer where it's appropriate to do that. You can really support them a little bit more. So I think that that's the model that we'd be aspiring to have, based largely on numbers and referrals we see into the current social prescribing service, and also just on feedback from the GPs themselves. And the difference between the CSA role, COVID support advisor role, and the community connector role is quite distinctly different. The COVID support advisors are there to be people on the ground answering low-level queries regarding COVID. The community connector is a role that's more skilled. You're looking for somebody who's got a background working in this area, is used to talking to people. I always say about a community connector, they've got to be a bit like a sponge. They've got to have this ability to collect up huge amounts of information about everything that's going on in a professional world, around kind of support services in the community, and also hear what that person's saying. And for that reason, they are incredibly different. I think a COVID support advisor would be they could be out on the streets talking to hundreds of people in a day, whereas a connector would be working one-on-one with people day in, day out. I hope that answers your questions.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. It does. Just moving on to the comment side of things, you are pushing very much at an open door with this model with me, I have to say. It's for the councillors really, and in terms of our recommendation to Cabinet, and this is perhaps for a discussion at the end, is that at the moment that the commitment is towards 1 year. actually, in terms of getting good people and the right people into these roles in quite a crowded, competitive labour market, we want people who are good. Should Cabinet be putting its money where its mouth is, actually, and committing to 2 years, regardless of how the commissioning exercise goes around social prescribing, but sticking our neck out and really investing in the model. That's my question for perhaps for the Cabinet members around and for the rest of the committee to think about.
Thank you, Dan. We'll look at the issue of the commitment after we've addressed any questions and further comments on the paper. So I'm just going to pass over to Councillor Catchpole if you'd like to put your question or comment.
Thank you, Grant. Yes, it's a very, very welcome move. I think that more down on the ground kind of approach, as you've explained, will help the GPs to gain the confidence to make the referrals. I've just got one question on 3.6 on page 13. I just don't understand the last sentence. I wondered if you could just explain what that means, please. A connector model would support the continued tension that COVID has brought into communities.
Yeah, so that's about low level. We use the word disquiet, I think we use at the moment, kind of within communities. So people have been together a really long time. I question whether anyone's not sick of the sight of the people that they live with and the people that they're near to on a day-to-day basis. And what we're seeing is a real rumbling of community tension. It's low level, it's small things, and it's not the sort of stuff that really we would like our environmental protection colleagues to be dealing with. And what we're able to do through a community connector model is get out there, get people talking in a really positive way, hook them in with other services and get them away from that environment that they've been in for such a long time. We know that community connectors are brilliant at things like identifying a person's interests and getting them connected in with that group that they didn't know existed. We know they're really good at encouraging somebody to deal with low-level issues in a responsible way that doesn't antagonize the situation, because that's what they're good at. We employ the right people that are good at those things. So when we talk about dealing with the tensions that are brought by COVID, it is as simple as just dealing with those issues that are very much centered around the home. And we know this. We know that within a family dynamic, when we came out of the initial big lockdown, there was an awful lot of family problems that were arising that rumbled on during lockdown, and we hope that we'll help to resolve those. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Right, I see that there's a comment put in the chat with by Jamie. Would you like to just add something to that?
Chair, not at all. I was just supporting Kerry's point. The principle of prevention, an ethos this council is very comfortable with. I know is it's a clear sentiment in this model. Get to things early and stop them becoming bigger things. Ultimately, makes moral sense, but often to us makes financial sense because of its prevention on the use of crisis services, which invariably are more expensive. So that was my only point, Chair. Thank you for bringing me in.
Super, thanks, Jamie. I have, of course, just a little bit of clarity that I'm looking for. Paragraph 3.8. It says there that the changes will have limited impact on the structure of the Help Hub as shown below. What do you mean by limited impact? Is it time? Is it resources? Is it funding? Could you be a little bit more specific about how it's going to be, what kind of impact are we looking at? Because this from the commentary in the paper, it says that the community funders will be externally funded. Mm-hmm. So if you could just give us a little bit more detail about that.
So in terms of impact on the team, this won't be a new service to the officers that are working. We work across the 2 districts. The current manager for that service is a guy called Mark, who is absolutely awash with years of experience in many other sectors, but also in managing the community connector service for South Norfolk. These guys would form a part of that team, but based obviously within the Broadland area. So we wouldn't need to bring in additional management resources or additional expertise to help deal with the day-to-day challenges that are presented by the community connectors role. As you can imagine with this kind of job, there is a real element of support to those guys that are doing the job. They hear and they see an awful lot, and we really try to support them with that and offer them kind of one-to-one supervision and one-to-one support to help them deal with those customers. And all of that is already in place. Because it's externally funded, there would be no impact on us in terms of a cost of that service either. So in both of those regards, I think that these roles would slip in really well to the existing team structure that we have in place.
So it would be more correct to say, because if you were measuring limited on a scale of 1 to 10, it would be a 1 or a 0.5.
Absolutely.
Because there's virtually no impact.
Their impact on the team is minimal. They'll actually provide a really positive impact because they will help to deal with some of the demand that's perhaps placed on officers where it's not appropriate. So their positive impact is huge, but their kind of day-to-day management issue is minuscule, barely there.
Okay, excellent. Right, Councillor Roper did put out for discussion or comment about committing ourselves to a 2-year period. I'm just wondering whether we can have some comments from Councillor Copplestone and perhaps also from Councillor Mancini-Boyle.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much. Kerry, just looking at your structure, it indicates that the community connectors are externally funded for South Norfolk District Council. I know that they've been in existence for quite a while. Are they currently funded by the COVID recovery funding, or is it a different stream completely? I'm just sort of interested in that because I know that they've probably been in existence for over 1 year. Thank you.
Oh, they've been in existence. I think we must be getting on for 6 years, 5, 6 years now, and they've always been externally funded. And I'm pleased to say that we've just secured 3 years worth of funding, just short of £1 million from the NHS to keep that service going. So to say we have experience in finding connector funding is an understatement. We've managed to do it now for quite a number of years, and that service has grown and grown ever since they were 2 connectors working down in Diss many years ago now, and that service we've been able to develop as time has gone on. So
Kerry, can I just ask, you're talking about using COVID recovery funding. Why are we not just going straight to the NHS to ask for the funding in the first instance? That's just to sort of set a precedent.
Yeah, that's because of the funding cycle. So when I talk about 2022, that's because that's the next time that the NHS funding cycle is up for grabs, for want of a better phrase, in the NN3 and NN4 areas. The NN1 and NN2, so many N's, the NN1 and NN2 areas aren't up for renewal until I think it's 2024. So we've got a slight discrepancy there, but we've kind of planned for this into many years into the future about what we might be able to do and how we might be able to do it. What this COVID recovery money gives us the opportunity to do is not just to have on paper the impact that the community connectors can have, but actually to prove it and to show the impact that they can have in Broadland ahead of us applying for funding, because I do think that that's been really instrumental in our success in proving their effectiveness to the NHS, because people like to see practical examples of what's going on in their area, and I think this would enable us to have that.
So just to summarise, you're expecting if we do this for the first year, you will be able to source external funding going forward.
I really hope so. That's our goal. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jo. Judy, would you like to bring in a comment? I hope she's still there.
You're on mute.
You're on mute, Trudy.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I'm confused now, I'm afraid. I didn't know much about the connectors anyway, which is why I wanted to come on the meeting this evening. I I'm now confused about the funding completely. So I've got to relook at everything that you've just said, because my understanding it would come from the COVID money that we've got. However, it doesn't have to in South Norfolk, but we would have to take it out of our COVID money, it sounds like you're saying. And then the way forward, if you want to make it permanent, we're initially going to have to commit our money, but South Norfolk have still got the NHS money. I don't know. So everything that's come up tonight is news to me. So it's difficult for me to comment at the moment, I'm afraid, Chairman.
Do you want me to clarify those bits for you, if that helps at all?
You can, by all means.
I can try anyway. So the reason that we're just in a different position, the South Norfolk connectors are just in a different position. They've been around for a longer period of time. And for that reason, we've secured money from the NHS for that service. What we hope by utilising some of the COVID recovery money is that we're able to provide a service in Broadland that is needed. That lower level support to the community would be beneficial, not only in the response to COVID, but in order to also expand on the Help Hub model that exists. With the expectation that we can go forward with that. That would make an equitable service across both districts then, where we're seeking NHS funding for both projects. And they would continue to run fairly separately, but under one team. I hope that clarifies things. Mike looks poised, so.
Well,
Thanks,
it sort of does, other than, although we are utilising their services at the moment, South Norfolk aren't paying for them anyway.
No.
But we now would be. So, and the COVID money can obviously only be spent once, and there's calls for it all over the place at the moment.
Yeah.
So I think we've got to look at it in the round, as I see it, that who wants the money, and because we, like I said, we can only spend it once.
Yeah.
So that would be my only comment at the moment. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Trudy. Yes, when I read that paragraph, it says for 12 months at a cost of 62,530 per annum, which indicates more than 1 year, but which would be funded through external COVID recovery funds. There doesn't seem to be any of that certainty that it will be, or that it has been agreed to be funded from the COVID recovery fund. Is there any way in which we can get that kind of certainty that yes, it is, because we don't want to start this process and then suddenly somebody turns around and said, no, well, actually the COVID recovery fund does not have £62,500 in it. So if we can just get some kind of clarity, and also when exactly would this be a start of the 12 months?
We're with, from my understanding, I know Mike, do you want to go first? I don't want to say something you're not going to say. We're within that period now, and we have absolutely no reason to believe that we'd have any funding this service from the COVID recovery money. It fits the criteria. Really, the only thing that we need in order for it to happen is agreement from members that you're happy with this approach, and then we'd be able to move forward. But Mike and Jamie now are chomping.
No, that's fine, and that's why, Chairman, it went to SEAC first to get your views here, and then it'll go to Cabinet for formal approval. So until that's done, but as Kerry said, you know, there is, and Councillor Mancini Boyle, there is enough money in the pot. Obviously, you know, where we spend that money is then down to members' decision.
Okay.
Chair, if it's helpful, a little bit of clarity about the funding, just because we use phrases interchangeably. So we have, I know Councillor Mancini Boyle will know this, but for others' benefit, we have two funding sources effectively. We have money the council has been given for its COVID response and recovery, which is Broadland Council's money. We also have access to what is called the Containing Outbreak Management Fund, COMF, one of those awful acronyms that we've come to use as a real word through the pandemic. We've been through numerous rounds of funding given down to the upper tier authority, who've made money available to districts, the second tier. The latest round of money is in excess of £600,000. for us as a district authority. We believe fairly firmly, and we've tested this across our management team in advance, but we believe that the use of money for the reasons Kerry's describing, in part because clearly there's a lot left, is entirely in the spirit of trying to contain the outbreak, because it is supporting the capacity for the NHS, which is one of the critical issues we are facing as a system. It's taking away demand presenting for the NHS, which potentially doesn't need to be there because there are no clinical issues, and it allows them to focus on some of the other longer term and more pressing problems that are facing the NHS. I hope that gives a little bit of clarity. And I think to Councillor Mancini-Boyle's other point, which is entirely and very well made, about seeing this in the round. If I've understood correctly, that the natural course now for this paper would be whatever recommendations are made by this committee this evening to Cabinet in the April Cabinet will be the same point at which officers will be looking to present a COVID recovery plan, which will look at all arrangements around recovery and calls upon resource. So you'll be able to see this in the round, as it were. But given it's a new service area to the authority, it feels completely appropriate to be spending a bit of time exploring what it is, what it would do, what it means, and how it would work. So I hope that gives some reassurance and maybe a little bit of clarity about what is a really confusing funding picture.
Well, thank you, Jamie. I didn't see any other hands except Councillor Bullman has got his hand up, and I think I saw Councillor King. Did you have your hand up? No. Right. Are there any further questions, comments before we go into? Oh yes. Besides,
Chairman, Councillor Leggett had a comment, I believe.
Okay.
Chairman, are you ignoring me?
I'm not ignoring you, Peter, sorry.
Okay.
But I did see your hand go up, and I did make a note. So if you wouldn't mind going first, and then we'll go over to Councillor Leggett.
Okay. So if I understood correctly, we have funding in place, assuming that Cabinet agree and Council agree, that we have funding in place for 1 year, correct? We don't have funding in place for 2 years. Therefore, it would be imprudent to actually go for a 2-year contract for these people, because we're making a commitment when we don't have budget for it. So I would not support that proposal. Sorry.
Okay, thanks, Peter. Councillor Leggett. Right, we'll need to get you unmuted.
Sorry about that. Yes, my query was reading the paper. There were some areas that weren't mentioned, and some surgeries that I know of in the urban fringe weren't mentioned. So I just wondered if you did plan to go over the entire of Broadland, or if you were just really concentrating on areas linked to certain surgeries.
The absolute plan in the long term would be to deliver a service that would access all Broadland surgeries, all Broadland residents. But one of the anomalies of the way that the boundaries work, because they're never the same as each other, is that the NN3 and NN4 are part of the North CCG area, and the others are part of Norwich. And that means that we're working on 2 funding streams. So where we take our attention to those surgeries that form part of those 2 primary care networks, it's purely based on the fact that that's where the funding opportunity to allow this service to continue post the time that we'll be using the COVID Recovery Fund allows us to access first. As I mentioned earlier, the plan would be that we would seek to have that service covered over the whole of Broadland when timing allows, really.
Right, and you've also got the problem, haven't you, with the urban fringe of people who live in Broadland but go to doctors in the city?
Yes, absolutely. So I think with social prescribing as a service that exists all over the county, it is everywhere, and you will naturally get people that go from one to the other. So you might have somebody that lives in Sprowston who goes to the GP surgery in Norwich. They won't necessarily, that's not a great example because they're on the same, but either way, they wouldn't necessarily get to one of our connectors through that route. But anybody that is a Broadland resident can access the support of our connectors anyway. So they wouldn't be at a loss because they're not at the right GP surgery, for want of a better phrase. Anybody who's our residents can access this service, and certainly when we're talking about this first year of funding, where we're aspiring to just provide a service of a community connector to all of our residents, and they wouldn't actually have to go through the GP surgery in the first place for that as it is. So nobody would be at a disadvantage.
Thank you for that clarity.
No worries.
Thank you, Judy. Right, I've got 2 left, and then we need to wrap this one up. So it's over to Dan. I think, Dan, you wanted to comment, and then Martin.
Thank you, Chair. As you know, I'm always somebody who will fly a kite and will try my luck. I think that a point which came to me really on this is that when we're looking at the funding going forwards, we need to be able to reassure people of their futures by the time they hit the 9-month mark in their employment, and in terms of fitting that around the commissioning decisions which are going to be made at that stage. Speaking as somebody who's delivering a project myself in the day job and was on an initial 12-month contract, I have seen my colleagues at months 10 and 11 take flight into other roles. And being someone, I felt confident that it would get 2nd year funding and have sat tight. I'm now sitting with a completely new set of colleagues nationwide on the project I'm delivering, because there wasn't that level of certainty. And I think it is just human nature coming into a 12-month post. It takes a few weeks to get up to speed. By the time you get past month 9, people are starting to look around and just trying to build in some certainty into the model. So that we don't have to start again with people, basically, is what I was looking for ideally there. And just on Peter's point about the funding being available, ultimately what we're looking for here is Cabinet making the funding available, whether it makes the funding available via the COVID funding, whether Cabinet wants to ring fence some money for next year's budget to carry it forwards. It's a decision for Cabinet ultimately. We're not hemmed in ourselves as a body in terms of what we recommend.
Thanks, Dan. What I was just going to say with regards to that is that our minute taker, if you could make a note of that is a comment. I would ask that Cabinet, when they do consider this paper, will take account of the fact that that has been commented. I don't believe that there will be consensus to make it as a recommendation. So I'm just going to go over to Councillor Murrell if you want to make some comments. And then we'll go over to Kerry again.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm really pleased about this one. And I think, you know, the figure 3.11 in there shows the difference between the 2 areas. Going back to what you were saying earlier, Kerry, and it is more sort of like clarification, because you said that for the funding, it goes in 2 cycles. So you've got the NN3, NN4, and then that's up for renewal in 2022. Mm-hmm. And then you've got the NN1 and NN2, that was 2024. So we would look to roll this out in its current state for the NN3 and NN4 areas. But also then you're already running this in South Norfolk. How many people have you got in these roles in South Norfolk?
We currently have 9 members of staff and 1 lead connector in South Norfolk. So there's a model that we work to kind of per head. There's sort of a number of hours of connector per head kind of calculation that we do. So we would always, I suppose what's important to clarify and just to reiterate, when we're talking at the moment, we're talking about this year's funding of the COVID recovery funding, the COMP. That's not to say that we maintain the exact same model all the way along. We would work with the providers through the primary care network, to talk to them about what level of service they want and how they would fund that. So any changes to it in the future would be guided by what is required by the NHS, if that's the route that we go down, you know, and if we are able to access funding through that way. So it might be that in these areas they have a slightly different approach to how they would like to see us fund it. They might have a different idea of numbers, and we would work with them to do it. And my comment actually ties in really well with what Councillor Roper said. When we're talking about these people that we're bringing into roles, they are aware that it's a temporary contract, but without question, people do start to look. But I would hope that it's reassuring, not just to them, but also to you as members, that we're already looking at funding for next year and the year after. So we are working our socks off to try and make sure that this is as ongoing as we possibly can make it. And we would make sure that anybody in those roles is aware of that.
So that would be very helpful. That's very helpful to know that you are at this stage already working on possible funding. But
Yes.
the uncertainty that the connectors that would become incumbents would have about the future would, I presume, be well addressed by 9 months at least into the 12-month contract. So yeah, thank you for raising that, Dan. I see that Councillor Catchpole has put in that you want either a question or a comment, and that will be the final one before we wrap this one up, because we still have another 3 items on the agenda which could be fairly involved and lengthy. So, Councillor Catchpole.
Thank you, Chair. It's just a question really for Kerry. I do some work with Citizens Advice, and we also refer to social prescribers. I'm wondering how many other organisations are in South Norfolk or would be in Broadland enabled to have this service available. So are you taking referrals from other organisations, and if so, which ones in South Norfolk?
I mean, anybody, really, if anybody, if any resident has any level of need that they need support with, they can have it. We have a very low criteria, and that is that you are a resident, and we will help you as much as we're able to, and help to access those services. And so many people don't know what support is available to them, because why would you? You don't have problems every day of your life that you didn't have the day. Things come up, lives change, and what the connectors are really, really helpful in doing is assisting a person to find the support that they need. And sometimes that's a really low level thing. Sometimes it's much more intense, and it's what they need. But every resident can access that, because every resident deserves the chance to be able to find help that they require, I think.
Super. Thank you, Kerry. That was very informative, and I do believe that the members are supportive of it. As I mentioned at the start, that the committee is asked to comment. And James, I gather that you have written down or made notes of all the comments that have been made on this report and on this scheme. But I haven't had any indication that there is any recommendation that we want to make, other than to say, yes, please go ahead. Does anybody?
Sorry, it's Leah who's been taking the minutes for this meeting, but I have been taking notes as well.
Oh, sorry. Right. So is any of the committee members wanting to make a specific recommendation other than the comments that they've already made? Okay. I don't see anything, so we will now move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the Service Improvement and Efficiency Committee Terms of Reference. And I'm going to hand over to Emma, if she would like to present her report.
Lovely, thank you, Chair. It's a shame the chair's not here because these were the changes that she wanted to make to the committee. So all I would really say is they are before you. The chairman has outlined in 3.3 her reasoning for the changes, which I think, as we discussed earlier, Chair, you read it a couple of times and then you understand what it is we're trying to achieve there. So I would present them to you as written, Chairman.
Super. So what we are presented with is that the wording would read: the role of the Service Improvement and Efficiency Committee is to consider and develop ideas for improving the effectiveness, quality and accountability of public services in the district, with due regard to equality, diversity and inclusivity. This will be achieved through learning, sharing knowledge and delivering efficient improvement solutions. Anybody want to comment on the wording? Councillor Roper, I see you.
Thank you. I'm more than happy with the wording. It's a comment really, in that I think somebody needs to look at the committee structure in this council and the way the different committees fit in with one another, and do we need as many committees? I was very struck by the previous item where it went to wellbeing panel, now it's come here, and then it will go to scrutiny, and then it will go to cabinet. And it does seem that there are a lot of pairs of hands on this. Looking at the items on this agenda, I think we've got alternative committees that could have took almost every item we've got on this agenda at the moment. And I think there is a danger of committees evolving themselves and not necessarily being considered in the round. So it's happy to agree this today, but I do think that there probably needs to be a look at how the committee structure develops in the future, if not at the next AGM, but at the one after that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. I think the music is still ringing in Emma's ears because I raised the same matter at a previous SIAC meeting. So yeah, the music is probably still blaring in her ears.
It is, Chairman, if I could respond on that, it is music to my ears. As officers, we quite often have a discussion around what is the route for this, where are we going with that, and we could end up going through the loop in the wrong way. So, and then obviously we have South Norfolk committees and all of those to go through as well. So I think it's not only music to my ears, it's probably all officers in the room. One of the things that's been on my to-do list for a while and just haven't got round to because of the interesting year that we've had is to absolutely look at everything that we've got, how it works, how it interlinks and where we're trying to get through with that. So the first part of that was absolutely looking at the policy development panels and the terms of reference. You agreed those at the last council, and then it will be looking through what we're trying to achieve with the other ones and absolutely how they all fit in.
Super, thanks Emma, and I don't want to digress, so we are going back to the recommendation, which is to review the proposed amendment to the terms of reference for the committee, and we've got a choice of two: either agree to the amendment to the terms of reference and recommend this to council, or make suggested amendments to the terms of reference and recommend this to the council. So does anybody have any strong views on perhaps amending it, or are we happy to proceed with what has been put forward by the new chairman? I see, Dan, you're in favour of that. A or B?
As it's put down, Chair.
Super.
A.
Right.
I would second that, Chair.
Super. Right. So we don't have to. Yeah. We'll just agree A, and all those in favour of A as the recommendation. Thank you. 1, 2, 2. Does that look unanimous?
It's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much. Right, so we now move on to agenda item 6, which is the members' IT. And I'm going to hand over to, I see we have Chris in the room as well, but it is Emma's report, so I'll hand over to Emma.
Thank you, Chairman. Chris is here if you get too technical for me, because we know I talk about Lego bricks and building blocks and all of that kind of stuff. So when you get technical, Chris will rescue me. So as you know, we talked about this at the last meeting. We've undertaken the survey. We've had conversations, Chris has had conversations with members around particular issues, and hopefully we're starting to resolve those and get some really good traction on where we're going forward. So what the report is telling you, the background, I've pulled out some of the highlights from the surveys that we've reported to you before as a refresher there, in terms of tablet ownership and quality rating, laptop ownership and quality rating, and also additional screen, and again, ownership and quality rating. There are some common themes there for you that have come out that I've highlighted at 2.3 in the report. I'll take those as read and won't repeat those out for you, but they're very much the key themes that have come through. And then again at 2.4, I've highlighted for you the themes that came through in the Q&A sessions that were really well attended. So I thank you for that. So at 2.5, I'm saying there that the survey is currently telling us that members are already using their own equipment for council business, and largely this is working well, whether this be their own iPad, tablet or second screen, whatever that may be. But delving into the specific responses, I think it's important to highlight that we're able to fix the majority of the issues through training and imparting knowledge of how best to use the equipment. So section 3 is in 2 parts for you. The first part of that talks about the software, and we talk around the issues and how we've been able to address those issues through the software, or how we will be able to do that through Office 365. So the key steps, as we talked about at the member briefing a couple of weeks ago in April, is around booking your appointments in. Your iPads will come in, the team will do their magic. You don't need to do anything to prepare for that. They will do whatever it is they need to do. They will remove the BlackBerry at work area that I know is loathed by some, so that frustration will be removed. And in there you will now get the full Office 365 suite. So you will get your emails, you will get Excel, Word, but you will also get SharePoint, you will also get OneDrive. And there's things on there that I don't even know how to use. So we're going to be doing some officer training as well. But we will, as part of that, to mirror that move over onto the Office 365 environment, provide you all with training. So you will be given some kit, but you will be provided with training on how to use that. That training will then also be available going forwards in a guidebook form, in a video form, because we know people learn in different ways. So you'll have those reference points to go back to. So looking at 3.2, we can see there that a lot of the issues that we've had can be resolved through the Office 365 rollout, which literally is round the corner. And as far as I know, on track. So that's all looking good. 3.4 then is where I've talked about the hardware, and there are a couple of issues there that came out through the surveys in terms of frustrations with hardware. As we can see there, size of screen and lack of keyboard. The survey has kind of shown that everyone, which I thought it would, everyone's got different ideas of what it is that they need. So the table there at the top of page 24 highlights the different things that you can get with those different options. So the main crux of the report, Chairman, is there before you at, I'm just make sure I get the right paragraphs here, paragraphs 3.8, 3.9 and 3.10, which is where it's asking the committee to make a recommendation to Cabinet in which they believe is the preferred solution based on the report in front of you. So 3.8 outlines the iPads, 3.9 outlines laptops, and 3.10 outlines own equipment. I think one thing that I really would like to emphasise in this report, Chairman, is that the iPads were only bought 2 years ago. They have a life cycle of 4 years. So if we were to replace those iPads, we would be bringing back into stock equipment that is not end of life. And we would be stuck with those because we don't use those for anywhere else. So I think it's a really important consideration for the committee to recognise that we would be bringing back stock that is not end of life. I will leave the report there, Chairman, because I am sure there will be lots of questions on this one.
Thank you, Emma. Yes, a very comprehensive report as well. So we'll be looking at the recommendations which have been put before us, and that is we need to recommend to Cabinet, A, the current position of iPads remains, or B, the Council invests in laptops for all 47 members to replace the current iPad provision, or C, which then the council moves to members using their own equipment only. So I'm going to throw that open to the members for comment, and then of course invite non-committee members if they want to also make any comments. So who raised their hand first? I didn't see.
Councillor Borman is asked to make a comment in the chat, followed by Councillor Roper.
Okay, right, so over to you, Councillor Borman.
Okay, the report makes clear that there are at least 3 different preferences amongst the members, correct?
Oh, sorry, I was on mute. Yes, that's correct, Chairman.
Yeah, what we have as a recommendation, or a series of recommendations, 3 in fact, is a one-size-fits-all. So why is it not possible to have a blend of those 3 recommendations to suit the needs of individual members? I don't see why we can't do that, because at the moment, the one-size-fits-all seems to be inappropriate and does not meet the needs of 2/3 of the members.
So the reason for the recommendations in front of you is, as I talked through there, the majority of the issues that you're facing currently will be resolved through the software issue. I think it's also worth pointing out that in a matter of weeks, we will no longer be able to hold remote meetings. We will be back in the chamber in some way, shape or form, unless the legislation is extended, because legally we'll no longer be able to meet like this. And some of the frustrations were the need to be able to manage both the papers and the remote meetings. And I think, and also with the ability to print, which has been some members' frustrations, I think the iPad can do what you want it to do. However, as a committee, you have the recommendations before you. You can do what you wish with those recommendations.
On the basis of that, then, I'd like to propose that we offer a blend of those 3 recommendations to members.
Unfortunately, that isn't one of the recommendations that we can make. But I think that the minutes could reflect that was a comment that the committee has made in this regard. So the next person is Councillor Roper.
Thank you. It's more comments than questions. You might be relieved to know. With regard to the recommendations, I personally think that number C, own equipment, is a non-starter.
Absolutely.
We've been here before as members, and back when members used to use their own equipment, there used to be an allowance towards using your own equipment. In fact, the monitoring officer is shaking her head, but I distinctly remember...
No, sorry, I'm shaking my head in the wrong way, Councillor Roper. The report makes it clear there would not be an allowance payable.
I know, indeed.
And there was, you're right.
And indeed, and the allowance was such that if a member didn't have equipment, they could buy equipment. There is no allowance included in this proposal. I think it's a non-starter to expect councillors to use their own equipment on council business when we're operating in a paperless way. Going back to when councillors used to use their own equipment, we used to get every agenda printed as well, which I'm sure is not something we would ever want to return to. So I think it's either the iPads or it's laptops. I'm speaking to you tonight from my county council machine. The reason I'm doing that is because my iPad with my Wi-Fi cannot handle large Zoom calls. I would be completely pixelated, for example, on that, which seems to be a drawback to the power of the iPad. The main difficulty I have is around storage on the iPad, and it is around dealing with typing long pieces of information. And as a member, if I'm going to do an email of any length, I essentially have to write it on another machine and then email it to myself, so that I can then edit it and forward it on from my Broadland iPad, which doesn't strike me as a very safe way of operating in terms of data, and it doesn't strike me as a very sustainable way of operating in terms of the way I work, but it's the way I have to do it with these machines. I do appreciate that getting rid of BlackBerry is going to solve a lot of problems. It is an awful system, and 365 is a lot better. But I do think that structural problems will remain as long as we remain with the iPads. And I think the way forward is to move towards laptop provision as opposed to iPads. When we do it, or whether we do it in a blended way, is perhaps a second part of this debate, but I think it's a direction we need to move in.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. One of the things that Emma did mention is that in a few weeks' time we will be resuming how things used to work, and my own opinion is that once we have this new software on the iPad, it will resolve all of the serious concerns and issues that members have had over the past years, in fact, with this BlackBerry software. So that's just my thoughts, that we need to focus on what's going to happen after COVID or post-COVID, and we're back in the council chamber working the way we used to work, but with better software. And the other consideration that Emma made was that we're 2 years in 2 years' time, and we've been we will have spent 2 years working with this new Office 365 software. We will then be able to evaluate how effective it has been under the new ways of working for members, because effectively we're looking at member IT, and any issues that we raise in the future, we can then make the decision, well, rather than going and spending money on new iPads, we could make the decision at that stage to change over to laptops for all members rather than roll out iPads. And then again, with Councillor Roper's comments about, and Councillor Bullman's comments about having a mixture of iPads or whichever is the new members' preference, then that could be considered at that particular point in time. But we're looking at what we're going to be doing now for IT for the next 2 years, which is our term of membership of the council. So our focus is to look at service improvement and efficiency for members. So I don't know, I see Councillor Murrell, you wish to make some comments. I see Councillor King, I see Councillor Hollard. Let me just make a note of that. So who was first? I seem to think it was Councillor Murrell.
Thank you. I think you covered really what I was going to say, that you know, the recommendation we're making now doesn't have to be fixed in stone going, you know, after the 2 year provision. So if we take the iPads and move to the Office 365 and then evaluate with the training and see exactly what the functionality then delivers once BlackBerry has been delivered. If during the next 2 years we still find that then this isn't the right solution, we can then look to review at the next round when we come to buy. Do we then need to switch over to the laptops, or as you said, as Councillor Roper said and Peter Bullman, do we go for the hybrid of, members choose whichever works best for them?
Absolutely, super. Yes, thanks, Martin. Just to reassure Councillor Roper that I don't think we're going to have Zoom meetings as a norm once COVID is finished. So issues of being able to have that kind of connectivity, I don't think that will be an issue going forward once we're back in the council chamber. And when we're out doing our work, meeting with residents, etc., I don't believe it'll be impairing in any way our ability to do the work that we need to do. So I've got Councillor King, if you'd like to come in.
Thank you very much. Councillor Murrell actually pretty much covered all my points. The only thing that I was going to say, in addition to Martin's points, was that we're going to get new software on these Blackberries, and BlackBerry's going to go. We're going to get new software for the iPads. I personally cannot stand BlackBerry. I think it's awful. However, if we start looking at replacing hardware, which could be at least £500, possibly up to £1,000, that's a lot of money, which we would possibly be wasting if we find that the new software is going to allow us to do our jobs better. And you're not going to know that until you've been using it for 3 to 6 months. And by the time we've got to that point, from it being, we're only going to be 18 months off the next elections. So I see it as being a waste of resources trying to make hardware changes at this juncture. So I would be quite happy to return back to the buildings, return back to the meetings in person with the iPads, with the new software. And if that works, that's the way to go. If it doesn't work, then when it comes to the next elections, then we can make sure that everything is in place so the right equipment does go to the councillors. Equally, in the future, we're not going to be having to do these meetings online, so we won't be needing anything more than the iPad itself. So I think that is the solution, is waiting and seeing and readdress it once we know if it works or not.
Absolutely super. Thank you, Dave. Right, over to Councillor Holland.
Thank you. Can I just say I thoroughly concur and welcome the change of software, which I think will solve a lot of problems. My only concern is that my biggest issue with using an iPad is the ability to read a document which can be anything up to 300 pages long. And I think I've given this example in the past where I have had, let's say, a diagram or a map that I wish to compare with the text to get some sort of associated context. I can't do that on an iPad. The screens are too small, and I don't feel I'm getting the full view. That will not change for me, I'm afraid. I'm a proficient user of all types of equipment, and I consider that the iPad is a specialised use. It is not, for me, office use. It's a mobile use. So I will always support a laptop over anything else, frankly. So that's where my preferences lie, without even testing it on an iPad, because I don't think the software will solve those problems for me.
Absolutely. No, I don't know that a laptop would resolve those issues either, because a laptop is it is a little bit bigger than an iPad. But if you were working at home and you were able to use your computer, I've got a wonderful huge television screen in front of me with my papers on it. So that would resolve that issue, but that's if I'm working at home. And a lot of our work is involved in being at the Broadland office, where we use the iPads most. I don't know how one would get around that.
No, I see what you're saying, but for you possibly, but I do think for me, the size of the screen of a laptop is almost twice the size of the iPad. And I do think that makes a considerable difference. That's just my opinion. I accept, but that is my opinion.
Yeah. Chris, would you like to comment on that that aspect as the IT specialist?
Yeah, I mean, there is no denying that, you know, reading long, cumbersome documents on an iPad can be tricky. I do agree with Councillor Holland there. However, I would say, just in defence of what was said by somebody a second or two ago about, as we begin to move back to sort of normality in inverted commas, and we have more meetings in our physical office space and council chambers, etc., the need to read such documents on iPads will probably reduce or shrink, I would hope. However, it's a bit of a balancing act between now and then, isn't it, really? I mean, there's no hard and fast sort of solution to that. But again, I think where Councillor Norden is saying, you know, he's got a big screen. It's down to what suits the individual, really. There is no magic silver bullet, I'm afraid, for this one. That's all I would add to that.
Super. Well, thank you, Chris. Right, I've got a comment from Councillor Prutton, and is there anything you'd like to add to that comment?
I'm certainly prepared to believe that Office 365 is going to be the resolution of all my grouses and gripes, and I think we should all be prepared to let it settle in, just as someone said, for 3 to 6 months. And we will, hopefully, we'll be back in the chamber with the new software. And I'm prepared to give Office 365 a chance and the benefit of the doubt, and leave the issue of changing equipment. As Emma said in her report, it's 2 years worth of machinery with 2 years worth of life still stuck on the shelf if we ditch the iPads in favour of laptops. So roll on Office 365 and let's see what happens. Thank
Super.
you.
Thanks, Sue. The next one is that I can see is Councillor Mackie.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chairman. And just to endorse what other people have said, and certainly taking on board Councillor Roper said, you know, these are quite suboptimal units compared to what the County Council provides for undertaking work, undertaking team meetings. However, you know, we are where we are. And the officers have said this is 2 years to run on this particular system. And I think, you know, we've just had a council tax rise. We've just had a discussion about delivering frontline services. And I think, you know, if we can make do for another 2 years until the next broadened elections, or at least review it in 12 months' time, I think as a council as a whole, we probably spend enough time and money and effort on this particular merry-go-round, and I think we probably need to draw a line with a clear recommendation to Cabinet Chairman. Certainly don't support C. The County Council has been spending the last 12 months rolling out 5,500 pieces of ICT kit to close digital inequality gaps. And I certainly wouldn't want that at a council level either, where members of the public feel excluded from taking part in democratic activities because they haven't got the right technology. And it shouldn't be a question of even asking for it. It should be provided as a right for councillors. Certainly, if people want to bring other laptops or devices to council meetings, if and when we finally get back to read them better at council, that's no problem at all. But I think in terms of cost and just making do of what we've got, I'd like to propose item or agenda item A, Chairman, as a recommendation to Cabinet.
Thanks, Councillor Mackie. Right,
Can I second that, please?
Okay, Councillor King. It's seconded by Councillor King. Right, I was going to take other members of that are not members of the committee, but Councillor Catchpole, you wanted to come in, and if once Councillor Catchpole has mentioned or had her say, are there any other members of the committee that want to have something to say before I open it up to non-members and, of course, our cabinet members who are present. So is there anyone, if you could put a comment in that I could see? It's just Caroline after Councillor Catchpole. So over to you, Councillor Catchpole.
Thank you, Chair. I have to say, I think the iPads are substandard for the work that we're trying to do with them. And I would recommend, or like to put a proposal forward that we recommend B, that the council invest in laptops for all 47 members to replace the iPads. I think that would make us more effective and certainly solve the problems that aren't going to be solved by Office 365. So I'd like to make that recommendation, please.
Okay, so for your proposal, do you have a second for that?
Sue Holland.
Sue Holland, okay, so we've got proposals for A and for B. So now that we have had a look at those from committee members, I'm now going to ask those non-committee members if they would like to now make any comments. And I have on my list first is Councillor Karimi Guvenlu, and then Councillor Brennan after that. So over to you, Caroline.
Thank you, Chair. I would welcome Office 365, as I think a lot of people, a lot of us who use it already and are quite familiar with it. The issue I have with the iPads is they are so small. I don't know about all of you, but my eyes have got worse during this last year, looking at a small screen all the time. And I'm sure I need new glasses because I can't see the words half the time. I think also individual circumstances need to be taken into account. As I said before in meetings, a lot of councillors who are Norfolk County councillors already have IT equipment which they can use. You do not need to buy laptops for every member of this council. Individual circumstances need to be taken into account. I have a husband who works from home. We have one PC. I can't use that PC during the day while he's working. So if I want to write any documents, write any letters to anybody, I have to wait until the evening to do it, which by the time I've looked after my grandson all day, I am absolutely knackered. And I would rather have something that I can use during the day to use and do my work on. And I don't think the iPads are suitable for that. Thank you. That's all I want to say.
Yeah, thanks, Caroline. Nigel?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. You've seen my comment, no doubt. We can have laptops, whether they be Windows derived or otherwise, that have touch screens. I don't have any problem with portability, as I've said in the chat. My personal laptop is 17-inch. I take it on holiday with me. I take it other places. It's not a problem. I do agree that there's a certain portability with an iPad or any other tablet of similar size with 10-inch screen. And it is nice when you open up an iPad that it comes on and it's kind of there. But it just does not have the functionality that we need. I can sit here, I can have numerous screens open at the bottom on tabs and just flick from one to another. I can split screen. I don't have to worry about the intricacies that Apple force upon us, saying you can do this, you can do that. With a Windows-based laptop, I can do what I want to do and not what a company tells me I have to do. And that, I'm sorry, that is the bottom line, that we need that functionality to be able to do what we want to do it when we want to do it. And I know Chris and I have spoken about this before. So that's my take on it, Chairman. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Brennan. Any other non-members that, other than Cabinet, that are present, wanting to make a comment?
Councillor Emsell, I think is, sorry. He's a Cabinet member there, isn't he?
That's right. So just any other members that are attending? Councillor Lawn was one of those. I don't see anything. So over to you, Councillor Emsell.
I'm very keen for all members to be comfortable with what we provide and how they use it to make them efficient councillors. For me, that is important, that we've got to have the tools to do that. From my point of view, I'm listening to what everybody's saying, and we have got that situation where we do have lots of things that we don't know if they're going to be solved by the software. But the amount of people who are talking about the software being really good, that might mean that quite a lot of the problems are solved from that. I'm of that feeling that we've had the iPads when we were in the council chamber. They were there so you could look at papers and be in the council chamber. We've now had this situation where we've been at home. I've used my iPad for the Zoom meeting, and then I've had paper copies there to look at. So that's like the other way round. I think moving forward, we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know if we're straight back in the chamber or if they are going to extend the legislation to mean that we do have more Zoom meetings. Again, we're not really sure. I know personally that things are changing from, the April the 12th and then May the 17th. So we have got that sort of thing coming up. I would be much more comfortable if we could see how the new software rolls out, see how things are, and consider the next change in the 2 years. Because in the terms of what we're doing, we will have sort of 6 months then get into the new software, and then we can work on what happens. Personally, I really like the affordable, the ease at which the iPad gives me the chance to sort of have it with me all the time. So for that, but when we're looking at, for instance, what was said about 300-page documents, are we looking at that there should be a better way to get 300 pages of information to, as opposed to in a file where we have to zoom out? And that was what Dan was saying about how much space these things take up on our systems. And I don't know if we can work on that as well, which is something to mean that we get the information we need, but we're not overloading ourselves with things. So there are things going forward, but I would really like to see that we see how things change with the software and see how that affects things. And again, look at that if there is a definite sort of, medical need or change or something that people need, we can look at that. But at the moment, we just see how things go with the new software, and hopefully lots of our issues will be resolved. And then we can then sort of take it from there, and hopefully that would be fine. But that is just my view as a person who's been, using the iPads and found that I don't have some of the problems other people have. But we needed to be aware of those problems, which I think is something which we weren't aware. And now we've got more information on what people's concerns are, and hopefully some of the software will solve some of those problems. But then we'll have some more sort of to work through from that.
Super. Well, thanks for that, Jonathan. Right, now I'm going to need to ask Emma, as monitoring officer, whether it's appropriate for what I intend to do with regards to us as a committee making a decision. What I'd like to do, and this is what I need to check with Emma, is whether we can ask or do a roll call, and each member of the committee will then indicate whether they are in favour of A or B, because those are the only two options that have been put forward in the form of proposals that have been seconded, whether that would be acceptable as a means of this committee reaching a decision.
I think that makes perfect sense, Chairman. You've had two different proposals, one for iPads, one for laptops. I think that makes absolute perfect sense, Chair.
Absolutely super. So can I go over to, it's Leah, hey, sorry.
No worries. So if you could indicate whether you are in favour for A, B, or abstain for the other option. Okay, Councillor Bullman.
Abstain.
Councillor Catchpole.
B.
Councillor Holland.
B.
Councillor King.
A.
Councillor Mackey.
A.
Councillor Morrell.
A.
Councillor Nerdon.
A.
Councillor Prutton.
A.
Councillor Roper,
B.
and that's it, sorry. So that is 5 voting for A, 3 for B, and 1 abstention. So that the recommendation A is carried.
Right, so the committee is recommending, recommendation A. So, right, thank you, everyone. We now move on to the next agenda item, which is the Economic Growth Team appointment to vacancies and restructure. And is this report being presented by Director Courtier, or is
I've never been called Director Courtier. Wow. I feel honoured, Councillor Nurden.
Yeah. So is it yourself that is doing the presentation?
It is, yeah, Director Courtier reporting and presenting, if that's okay. I'm going to use those infamous words and say I'm hoping this is a relatively straightforward matter, but you may prove me wrong in due course. This is presenting to you some proposed changes and recruitment to vacancies in the Economic Growth Team. I don't need to stress to you how crucial that is. I think just so we understand what we're describing or what I'm talking about, in Appendix 2 on page 35, the Growth Delivery Team is effectively, the Economic Growth Team is effectively divided into 2 sections: business support and promotion, and then the growth delivery function. I'm not going to talk for too long, but effectively the growth delivery function has a number of vacancies. We're looking to fill 5 of those vacancies with some tweaking of the posts. On the business support side, we are wanting to look at that in a bit more detail, propose some changes to that team, but along the lines of the principles that are set out on page 28 of your report. So it is for noting the changes for the growth delivery team as described in the report, and also for noting and any comments that members may have with regard to the principles as we look at implementing some changes to that business support side of the economic growth team. I'll leave it there.
Can I interrupt? Yeah. Can I?
Please, well, I'll leave it there. Yeah, please do.
Okay, super. Yeah, that's just the paper copy that we received through the post doesn't refer to page numbers.
My apologies.
I must apologise for that, Chairman. We had a problem with when they were printed out, but the electronic copies are numbered.
Yeah. So when you were referring to page 28, I was looking for page 28. So
you can
just be more specific.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I'm referring to is in terms of the Appendix 2, which is the very final paper page of your document. With regard to, sorry, just bear with me. Do you know what, Chair? I may have even actually given you the wrong, it was paragraph 2.8. My apologies, rather than page 28. So I confused myself as well. So it's paragraph 2.8, which sets out the principles that we are going to be applying to the changes to the business support team.
Well, thank you, Phil. Now revert back to your more informal title, Mr. Courtier. Right. I did see somebody put in that they wanted to comment, and that was, I think, Councillor Holland, if you'd like to go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it was more of a question, really. I'm interested that, if I've read this correctly, that we are going to fill the vacancies for the growth team and look again at the support team. Is that correct? I'm just curious as to whether that will pose any problems, given that some businesses may be in more need of support, particularly following the COVID pandemic and such like. So it's really just for a bit of clarification, if possible. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's a very good point. I mean, let me just start before I answer that question. I cannot praise the team enough in terms of the work that they've done through this pandemic. They are absolutely leading the way in terms of supporting businesses, distributing grants. They are, I'm not a great fan of, performance reports across the country, but they are absolutely at the top of the tree in terms of the way they've distributed grants. So I'm not concerned about the ongoing support for businesses through this period of time. What we're wanting to ensure is that without diminishing that offer, actually they are better placed to provide and that service to businesses. It's not looking, as I say, to diminish it. You'll see in that paragraph 2.8 of the report, looking also just to ensure that data and business intelligence supports the team's activities. Is still looking to support the startups and the SMEs, which has been so precious to the work of Broadland over many years. We are also looking to enter into a new economic strategy, again having regard to coming out of the current crisis. So we are working to still support businesses without diminishing the offer that we've done so far.
Thank you very much. That's lovely. Thank you.
Right, any other members wish to comment? Please don't all rush at once. I don't see anything. Right. I think
apologies, Chairman. Sorry, Councillor King has his hand raised.
Sorry, Councillor King, over to you.
Thank you very much. I'm just curious to know how long these vacancies have been vacant.
Yep. Councillor King, I don't have those precise details. They've been vacant over a period of time. Sorry, let me explain that better. So 2 of those vacancies have probably happened in the last few weeks. One of those vacancies has probably been vacant for a number of months. So it's not that we've suddenly lost all those posts. They have happened over a period of time. But certainly the 2 most recent ones came within a short span of time between each other and only in the last couple of months, which has led to this much more wholesale review.
Right. Thank you. Anybody else got any comments that are members of the committee? Councillor Catchpole?
Just a cheeky one. Why is everybody leaving?
I think that is slightly cheeky, Councillor Catchpole. In all seriousness, I think we've got a good team, and some of them have actually gone on to better jobs. One's gone on to a promotion at North Norfolk in a similar role, but as a team leader, whereas she wasn't previously. One's gone on to one of the Suffolk authorities, again, effectively as a promotion within an area of work that she was very passionate about. So one's gone on to Breckland, again as a promotion. So the vast majority have gone on to better prospects, better promotions that we weren't able to offer them at the time.
Right, I think Emma would like to come in as well. Does Councillor King, do you have your hand up for a reason? Oh, okay, sorry, thank you. Over to you, Emma.
Thank you, Chairman. It was just on a wider point, as some members in the room will know, we have got a time and task panel operating at the moment, looking at turnover across the board. So I just wanted to flag that with members that we are looking at that.
Super, thanks. Right, because I've just got a couple of questions. One of them might sort of stray into that area, but the first question I have relates to paragraph 2.7, where it says the council's constitution delegates the responsibility of a restructure, including the establishment of new posts where there is no net cost to the council, to officers in consultation with the transformation and organisational development portfolio holder. And the question that I have is, what about, because this is an area in which we have economic excellence as a portfolio surely Councillor Copplestone should have been involved in the discussions because she is responsible for driving the council's strategic ambition in this portfolio. So if I can have any comments about why it is the transformation, or does our constitution actually state that it's the transformation and organizational development portfolio holder for all changes? I would prefer to see something along the lines that it should be in consultation with both the portfolio holder responsible for that portfolio and the transformation and organizational development portfolio holder. So if I can have your comments on that, and then I'll go on to the next question that I have.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much. It's a very good point, a very valid point. Let me just assure you, Councillor Coppleston is on this call anyway, so she can comment if she wants to. But I can assure you, she has been involved in these discussions. She had early sight of this report. I don't want to put words in her mouth, but she was supportive of it. In terms of why is it Councillor Emsall's role in this particular case? That is because it is in the Constitution. And what this relates to, and what that quote is effectively in 2.7 referring to, is a generic approach to where you are restructuring or appointing, but it's no additional cost to the overall budget. That is delegated to officers in consultation with, in this case, Councillor Emsall in his role. And therefore, that is a constitutional matter. That doesn't mean to say that we neglected the portfolio holder through this process, but the Constitution does require us to effectively do that delegated function in consultation with Councillor Emsall.
Can I just go back on that? Because my understanding is that the transformation and organizational development portfolio is a recent creation. Is that, can you just indicate, maybe Emma can, when that portfolio became part of the Constitution?
Before my time, Chairman. So that was in place before. So Jonathan's been in that role for as long as I can remember. So how long have I been? 2 years? Blimey, it's nearly 2 years. And that delegation has been there for that time. And it's because that holder has the responsibility. Part of the Jonathan's portfolio is HR, human resources. So that's why it's that way. One thing I will say, again, music to my ears, I feel some reviews of the Constitution coming on, and a Constitution working party to deal with some of these, which again is music to my ears.
Yeah. Okay. Then
to show my age, Chairman, that there used to be a cabinet member, and then it became part of the leader's portfolio when that particular cabinet member resigned at that point, and then when there was a change of leadership, it was split off from the leadership portfolio into its own cabinet position again.
Okay, well, thank you for that enlightenment, Councillor Roper. Right, my next question, of course, and this does stray into the area which we are talking about in another panel, but when we talk about the business support team and the proposals around that, the general first principle is that it will be cost neutral. And I just wonder about the reasons why staff have been leaving, perhaps for stress, perhaps because of the workload, perhaps because of the working environment, or other staff well-being considerations. That perhaps these issues will persist, but if the council is an investor in people, then for us to see an improvement in service delivery, of course, which is what we ultimately are here for, surely we would be looking at an increase in the cost of delivering that service. So therefore, I would hope that it's, if you're going to have a restructure, you want to spend money to, it's an old cliche in business, but you spend money to make money. And I would suggest that if you are going to spend money to improve the service and make it even better, you would invest more money in people to deliver an improved service. So I don't know what you'd like to maybe comment on that, that aspect of being cost neutral.
Yeah, I think, how would I like to make a comment? I mean, I think obviously if you direct the money made on the savings on laptops into the growth delivery team, I think that'd be a wonderful arrangement, probably. So I think that's probably a done deal. Clearly, paragraph 4.2 does say, one of the other options is to put more money into the team. There is an infinite, work around the economy, work with businesses. There are an infinite number of projects that we could be doing to support our economy, to be supporting our businesses. One of my roles as Director Courtier is to also keep an eye on the overall budget and the savings we have to make. And even yesterday at Cabinet, clearly the work towards securing the savings in that savings tracker was noted. And I do need to have regard to that as well. But look, this is work that I feel very strongly about. It is work that we absolutely want to see. We want to see our communities thriving. We want to see good jobs in the right places for our communities. That I cannot tell you the amount of work that the team is doing. Tig is on this call. He is working all hours. The team is working all hours. Can we put more money into it? Of course we can. Do I also need to be cognizant of making savings along the way? Of course I do. But clearly, ultimately, any sort of growth bid would be a political decision anyway.
Super. Thanks, Phil. I'm just going to invite Councillor Copplestone if she would like to come in and make some comments on what has already been said in the meeting so far.
I just fully support what Director Courtier has said all the way through. Thank you. I support these small changes to the team, as does Lisa Neal, my opposite portfolio holder in South Norfolk. We would like these appointments made as quickly as possible. I think it was Councillor Empsall's decision to bring this to SEAC, but I think we need to get on with the business that the economic development team does. They've been doing an outstanding job across the area supporting our businesses, and I just want these appointments done as quickly as possible to continue that work, and especially in the growth delivery team to sort of go out there and really get funding driven back through into our area. That's really, really important. And as you said, if council is minded to give us a bigger budget, that would be fabulous. Thank you very much. And I just ask everyone on the call to support the recommendations. Thank you.
Super. Thanks, Councillor Copplestone. I'm going to also ask Councillor Empsall, because he has been obviously consulted on this, if he's got any comments that he'd like to make.
Thanks, Grant. I've just got a couple of questions. I see in the paper on 2.3 that there's the description of the growth delivery manager where we're talking about more commercial. Would that be that we're looking at someone who's maybe more from the business, from the business community, as in someone who's been dealing with food businesses or farming businesses or something like that? Or I'm just sort of trying to get a feel for if we're looking at someone from sort of outside the normal council terms, as it were, to look at the business development of those, the growth, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, it's a really good question. So yeah, don't get this wrong. In terms of, you've still got the business support side, and that's that sort of business acumen, just understanding how businesses work. On growth delivery, it's much more, and this is a transition that we've undergone through the last probably 10 years or so, and will continue more and more so, of actually proactively intervening to deliver sites, to deliver infrastructure, to deliver projects. The best current example of that is the Food Innovation Centre. Anyone that's involved with buying land, building buildings, letting out contracts, letting out units, will understand that they are, complex land deals, funding deals, finance deals. a whole new range of skills that we're getting quickly, used to. That's now probably a significant part of my job, doing those sorts of contract negotiations and land deals and so on and so forth. But we want someone who can come in with that experience of doing those land transactions, those legal agreements, the building contracts, etc., that probably we haven't had previously.
And just obviously a sort of question linked to that, how would this role, it sounds to me it's quite similar to what obviously the LEP would do in situations. Is this like that is a similar role like that, or is it moving away from that?
Yeah, the LEP, if you look at their work, doesn't normally do that direct delivery. They act as a partner to others who are doing that delivery. So the LEP are often a conduit for funding. The LEP are often, a support and, as I say, a partner rather than that direct delivery. So we would be we are taking on more and more of that direct delivery role, which is why we're looking for those skills, and the LEP would partner us.
All right, excellent. And then just my other point was, I'll just mention it quickly on obviously the business support team. One thing that obviously that I think members at Broadland especially felt was that the way that it's a non-statutory department, so the way it was working, we were really pleased with the way it was working there. Now, I understand obviously from 2.9 that the program manager has been brought in for 6 months. Is that to see how best to work that department? Because obviously they're not in the structures and everything. So is that just the 6 months to see how best to sort of proceed on that?
Yeah, so the program manager, again, when you have a number of projects and a number of things that are just going on, not least, as I say, around COVID and the current response that we're making and all the pressures on the team, there was money in the vacancies that we've got to bring someone in for a 6-month period, effectively to bring in a right-hand person for TIG and to support that team. So that person is in for a temporary period of time, but that gives us some breathing space and it allows us to look at that team more holistically. And as I say, make sure that it's fit for purpose going forward. Please don't get me wrong. It is not that it is so fundamentally flawed at the moment, but we just want to be able to have a look at it and say, how can this be better going forward?
Yep, that's well, obviously, but with that, where I've just sort of said about the members are really excited about what was being done. So let's just bear that in mind. But for me personally, I think there's so much good stuff that we've been doing during COVID, and obviously moving forward, I think some of the ideas that we're working on are infinitely better than the Food Innovation Centre, for instance, is something which is an amazing project that I think we would have in the past heard about and maybe been consulted on, but it wouldn't be our project. So for me, there are some amazing things going forward, and I really think that that it is a really positive thing that we're looking at doing them ourselves as opposed to just being part of them. A Norfolk County Council project that we're just part of. This is moving forward much more for us, so it is really positive.
Absolutely. And that is why, in 2.8, I do not underestimate the passion with which Broadland members sort of, hold fast to that support for the smaller businesses, the SMEs, there's the small and medium companies, the startups. That has been that sort of tradition that Broadland has sought to support over a period of time. I haven't referred to training and skills here, but that is also at the forefront of our mind. We're having weekly meetings in terms of that skills and training agenda as well, not losing sight of that. And on that basis, it is also why we're saying we want an economic strategy that we are going to engage members in. We're not looking to do that behind closed doors and present something to you as a fait accompli. We do want you engaged in that process. That is why, 2.8 is drafted in that way.
I think Broadland residents over the years have had that personal feeling with, if they were looking to start a business and everything like that. And I know we've heard before about other councils where they don't have that personal feel. They're not interested in someone if they want to start a coffee shop, for instance. They're only interested in what I would class as LEP projects, which are obviously the bigger projects. And I think that personal feeling from the Broadland residents was that, you know, if they wanted to start a business, if they wanted to start a new venture, there was support there. And I think that's where some of the training came in, where it was just to give people an idea of how to start up a non-for-profit company, for instance. And I've personally attended one of those courses to see what it was like. And the small businesses from Broadland that were on that, it was amazing to hear these ideas that our Broadland residents had for businesses to move forward. And that was really interesting to see how that went. And that was really successful. And I think that support for everyone starting in business, and obviously at the moment where businesses have had to change how they do things. I was listening to a story today which said that a business that was a hairdresser's changed to a cocktail bar because, you know, that was the way to do it. So that feeling of the change that businesses might do, the support we can offer them is very important.
Yep. I'm going to say one last thing very quickly, and then I'll stop, you know, because we could go on forever, couldn't we? I'm not proposing to change that. And in fact, what I'm suggesting, and what I think you can see through even the events of the last 12 months, is that the things that we might not have done in the past, like the Food Innovation Centre and other projects like that, we are doing, but we will also continue to work with those smaller businesses as well. So I'm hoping that we get into a point where we are having our cake and eating it. That we are actually having the best of both worlds as we move forward. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Phil. I'm struck. We as a committee are just recommended to note these two things. But when I go back to paragraph 2.7 and I read there that it's delegated to officers in consultation with the portfolio holder, who's just asked some rather probing questions. So my question is, well, it's an impression. I just wonder how much consultation was had with the portfolio holder, because he has found the need to ask probing questions at this meeting. So I just wonder what consultation did take place, and whether it was detailed enough or in-depth enough that perhaps did not necessitate the need to have him asking these questions that he's asked at this meeting. So if you can comment.
Absolutely, Chair. No, I mean, I'll be very honest. We had some email exchanges. We had at least one telephone conversation, but he absolutely used his right to say, do you know what? I'd like members to have a look at this. And so in the nicest possible way, that was a genuine request. I have no problem bringing it before members today. And on that basis, there wasn't much need for further discussion around it. But he was keen that it comes before this committee, that there was a wider member exploration of these issues. That's why we're here today.
Absolutely, but just curious as to why he was the one who was doing most of the questioning on this agenda item.
Just to say, Grant, your first point about the constitutionally, I could make the decisions and say that's fine. For me, I like to know that members are aware of what's going on, and that for me is why it's important that the officers share the information with the members so that we can have that input. And that is the point here, that the one hand is that, you know, this might not have come to this committee, but then none of the members that are present here would be fully clued up on it. Now, I've asked questions from having the reports and everything like that, and that's what I think, you know, is the way for members should do it. Now, for me, I'm more comfortable knowing that we've had a discussion about this, and regardless of what questions people have asked, they've obviously looked at things in a stronger way. You know, they've actually looked at it as opposed to just hearing about it, which is what I think is best.
But we as members are just required or requested to note. We can't make any recommendations. We can just interrogate the report. Presumably, it won't go to overview and scrutiny. It won't go to cabinet. This is the only committee that it will see, and it is being told too that these are what is going to happen, and the portfolio has had a look at what is going on and is quite satisfied, but is just curious to hear what the committee members feel about it. I am of the opinion that it definitely should be, our constitution should be reformed to include the relevant portfolio holder responsible for that in consultation with yourself as portfolio holder for transformation and organizational development. So those are just comments.
Well, Emma did say that we could have an update on the constitution, but you know me, I would not be making any decisions without speaking to the people that I feel are relevant, and don't have any illusions that the people you think are relevant and the people I think are relevant are probably the same. We don't agree on much, but that probably is true.
Chair, it is also just worth noting, it was alongside conversations with Councillor Emsall, it was being discussed with also the leader, so he was also aware, and he was also keen that it comes before members along with Councillor Emsall.
Okay, so the only members it'll go before is the Service Improvement and Efficiency Committee. It's not going to go anywhere else. This is where it stops.
You're the main man.
There is now a paper that other members can look at to give themselves more information.
And that will be in the Councillor file share at the moment. So that it's not. Will this be reported in the members' bulletin, for example, so that other members become more aware of what's going on in the economic development team?
I'm very happy. I'm very happy to publicise it wherever you so wish.
I think it's that situation where we are talking that these are new big projects that we haven't done before, and I think all members should be interested to see how things are going.
Okay, super. Right, so we've got the recommendations to note. The proposed changes to the growth delivery team and the intention to fill the current vacancies, and to note the principles to be applied to the proposed changes to the business support team, and provide any comments that can be taken into account in finalising the team's structure. So, Leah, you have made notes of our comments. I don't know that there are any other members who wish to make any comments. I don't see any hands going up or anything in the chat box, so we don't have a work program to look forward to on any of the other things, so then my suggestion is that the meeting should now be closed. So it was all nice to see everybody, and have a pleasant rest of your evening.
Thank you, Chair. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you for chairing, Grant.
Thank you.
You did well.
Thank you, Grant. Well done.
Okay.
Leah, can you stop the live stream, please?
James has got control of that. You need.
Oh, James.
Sorry.